Michelle Rudd. I help support our Jaspersoft customer team, marketing team, and community, capturing customer stories, creating informative content, and producing our monthly newsletters to help our users and developer community stay up to date on the latest and greatest from Jaspersoft. I'm joined today by Abhishek Nishis, Vice President of Software Engineering, Anna League, Lead UX Designer, and Divya Shaker, Senior Manager of Software Engineering. Before we begin, we will be sharing a recording after today's call. You can submit your questions via the webinar Q&A. We will reserve time at the end to answer these questions live. If you're a current customer and have any additional questions, please reach out to your account executive or customer success manager for assistance. If you're considering a move to Jaspersoft, please contact us at our website at www.jaspersoft.com/contact us. Over to you, Abhishek.
All right. Thanks, Michelle. Welcome, everyone. So let me start the roadmap presentation. And the goal of this session is to give everyone a preview of what we are building in the future, and also what we're planning to do with our current releases. So it's not only about the future, what we're building, but also what are the different things that we're doing with our current releases that we have out there. So before we begin, right, standard the disclaimer that we will be talking about a lot of forward-looking items during this presentation. So as much as we try to adhere to the timelines and features, things might change. All right, this is the agenda. So we'll talk about the release plan, the different releases out there, the planned releases in the future. Then we'll go into the roadmap. We'll talk about different areas of the roadmap. We'll also have some demos in between. These demos will be given by Julio, Shekhar, Damayanti, and Gopal, and Anna at the end. Right? Release plan. So whenever we're planning releases, we're looking at two things. As with most products, we're looking at the innovation. We're trying to build something new, something that will be very useful to our customers. And the second thing is more focus on the maintenance and the quality of the product. So keeping one hand to make sure that the quality of product is pretty high, and right from not just from customer bugs perspective, also from the security perspective. And you'll see that both the concepts cover in every release. So this has been the release calendar. So I'm not going back to the 8.0 and the 7.0s. I'm starting with a 9.0, which was released in the beginning of this year, right? And we also released our community version at the same time. Then in the June of this year, released the 7.0 community. This was a very important release for the community because this has the Jakarta support for the library, and we'll talk more about it. In next couple of weeks, we are planning to release 9.01 commercial and JRWS 3.01, and I'll talk about what does it contain. And last is a 9.5 commercial, which is planned for the end of the year. And I'll also answer questions that why are we doing another major release within 12 months time span. All right, the 7.0 community release, right? This was highly requested feature by the community. And the goal was to support both Java and Jakarta with the same community edition, right? And this was vital for the community. And we plan to do the same for the commercial editions as well. We had some more features that were introduced as part of community, like ADA accessibility tags. 9.01 commercial, this is planned so we're actually going to submit it this week itself. Maybe in the next couple of weeks, it'll be live. This is mainly to support the Linux 2023. This is something that has been planned, but there were some challenges in terms of support of Chromium with Linux 2023. And that's why we moved to Chrome and we're going to submit the changes this week. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks, this release will be out for all our AWS customers who are using the marketplace offering. Web Studio. So Web Studio is something that we have planned as a continuous release. So 3.0 was out with 9.0 release. We plan to do more. So in the next couple of weeks, we are releasing 3.0.1, and it'll have many new features that we are adding. And it's always backward compatible. That means you can still use the same Web Studio with 9.0. And Julio will be giving a demo of what the different features in this particular release. 9.5 commercial release. Now, this is the big release of the year. And the primary theme of this release is Jakarta support. We'll also have some features going into this release, but the primary, as I said, is the Jakarta support. And as you know, in the whole Java world, we are splitting between Java and Jakarta. And many of the web application servers and other third-party libraries are going forward, they're going to support Jakarta. So we had to make a call, and that's why the long-term stable release 9.0 is something that we supported with Java. And 9.5 that we are planning for the end of this year, calendar year, is something that will go with Jakarta. And I'll have a matrix in the next couple of slides to show you how do you pick the right release for you. I wanted to spend a couple of minutes on the Creators platform. This is not a product. This is an engineering instance that we have built. And the goal of this engineering instance is to collaborate with the customers, right? And the purpose is that we have built this instance, which is hosted on AWS, and it is free to all. Anyone can basically come in and take it. It's not meant for production deployment. It's meant for development. And this is where Jaspersoft Engineering is going to try a lot of new features, right? And this will not be the same as the release which is out there. It'll be different, slightly different. So we'll try different features. And the purpose we have is that we'll try something. We'll see how we get the validation from the customers. And the second main goal is for us to contribute more and more samples to all our customers, right? And see how, and you can clone it, you can copy it into your own workspace. And we would love to see contribution from customers as well. As I said, this is a different branch from the release branches. So don't look at it and say, okay, this is the same as something which is 9.0 and 9.5. It will be different, right? And that is all documented there. I'll give you a quick demo at the end of this webinar of how do you get to that and how do you start using it, right? Now let's spend a couple of minutes here. So as I said, in the beginning of the year, we released Jaspersoft 9.0. And it was released with Java specifications, right? And you can see all the web application servers we support, all the third-party libraries, the primary ones, which is Spring Security, Hibernate, right? And the different JDKs we support. Many customers have been requesting the Java Jakarta support. And it's a split because as you can see, right, even in the web application service, for example, Tomcat 9 supports Java. From Tomcat 10 onwards, it's only Jakarta. And it's not a small change, it's a massive change because there are API changes also. So you have to adapt to that. And also at the Spring level, like as you can see, there is a major jump, right? So for anything which is Spring 5.3.x, we'll continue to be on 9.0. If you're trying to get to a Spring 6.x and above, then that's where you have to go to 9.5. So you should look at this matrix, and that's how you should decide. So there are three scenarios. Either if you're on 7.x or some older release, then you should use this matrix to decide where do you want to go, 9.0 or 9.5. As I said, 9.5 planned for the end of this year. If you're on 8.0, 8.0 is also a long-term stable release. It's already been 3 years. We'll also support for another 6 months to 1 year. We'll extend that support. But ideally, I would want most customers to land up on 9.0 or 9.5 by mid of next year, right? We can look at a case-by-case basis if you have certain challenges. But ideally, you should be looking at either 9.0 or 9.5. And if you have more questions, I'm more than happy to set up a separate session with you guys and work with you to understand that what's the right release for you. Now, the goal of this release is not to push customers to immediately a new upgrade. That's not the goal. But the goal of the customers is for us is to make sure that there are two releases for them. And depending on what is their roadmap, they can choose the right release. Both will be long-term stable release. It's not that one will be short-term and the other will be long-term, right? So if you're on 9.0 and you want to continue on 9.0, you can continue on 9.0, right? You don't have to go to 9.5 unless you need these things. All right. Let's get into the product roadmap. So on the product roadmap, we have four primary pillars, right? With open source being our DNA, that's where we come from. And as you'll see that we did the 7.0 community release, and you'll also see some of the things Anna will talk about later in the webinar, that our goal is to kind of keep contributing back to the community, right? And in the way we can. Outside of the community offering, we have four pillars of the commercial offering: Pixel Perfect, Core Engine, Strong UX and DX, the user experience and developer experience, and the cloud and platforms, right? And each one of them have their own roadmaps, and I'll go into details of that. In the Pixel Perfect, it's primarily the Web Studio that we are focusing on right now. That's our core theme. On the core engine, as I spoke about, Jakarta is one of the critical parts that we're looking at. We'll talk about input controls because that is something that we're planning right now for 9.5. Security is the number one here at Cloud Software Group. So if any secure issues are reported, either internally or externally, that is taken as the number one priority. We also have proactive things like every merge, every things are checked with security with the scanner. So security is very high important. Database connectivity, this is where we test with all the possible databases that we support, whether it's a repository database or a data source, and we continuously test them and certify them, right? And be Snowflake or any of the databases, REST API, JDBC driver, or Mongo, any of the databases that we support. UX and DX. One big thing that we're doing, so this is where we look at domains, ad hoc data dashboards, right? And also visualize.js. One of the big concepts that we're playing right now is the visualize.js toolkit, what we call as a new UI toolkit. And we'll talk more about it on, actually, Anna will cover this more in detail later in the session, right? This is something where we think that's pretty cool. And especially if you're in the embedded scenario where you're embedding Jaspersoft, this is something that you must look at. ADA compliance, this has been a continuous practice where most of our customers who are where the ADA compliance is a mandatory thing for them. We are working with them to make all our screens, all our viewers and designers ADA compliant, right? It's a continuous process. We have done some, but there's still some gaps, and then we are trying to figure, take care of those requirements. We are, as I said in the beginning of the webinar, our goal is to make sure that we address all the bugs and enhancement requests to make sure the quality of the release is pretty high. Cloud and platforms. We have been on all clouds, almost name any cloud we have been deployed there, right? And our goal is to continuously support all possible cloud and platforms. So we have a dedicated GitHub page where we provide a lot of Docker samples for every platform, whether it's AWS, ECS, EKS, AKS on Azure, OpenShift, GCP, Oracle. Every Docker sample we have customers who have deployed Jaspersoft in every possible environment. This particular pillar also has scheduler and alerts. Scheduler is one of the core features for us, and yeah, I'll talk about some of the things that we have built on that side, including alerting. Docker, these are the two new Docker that we're planning to build, JRWS and JRIO. There is also that new license manager. So our current licensing tool is basically going in end of life. So we are replacing that with a new tool. Now, this will not be an impact to any of the customers. This is more for us, right? But it is more of an information to you that in future, we might give you a different license file to activate Jaspersoft, right? But it will not have any impact on you. Moving forward, so let's get into pixel perfect reporting. What are we doing here? So one of the main themes, as I said, Web Studio. We have been continuously porting more and more features from desktop to web, making sure that they're cross-compatible. Both will continue to exist, right? And our goal is to allow customers to build, almost more than 90% of the things with Web Studio without the need to go to desktop. Desktop will still exist. People who are very comfortable with desktop or want to do advanced things, for example, writing scriptlets, Java scriptlets, they can still go to desktop and start building things. But our goal is to have customers who want a zero desktop footprint to be able to use Web Studio and build those things. And for all the JasperReports server customers or IO customers, Web Studio is available to you, right? You don't have to pay any additional fees. So you should be able to download it and utilize it. Snapshot by parameters. So this is mainly more like a caching where you can actually create a report snapshot. This is more like when you're running a report and you save a snapshot, then next time it will not go to DB, it will use a snapshot. So we had this part where there was only one snapshot per report. We are extending that where you can have multiple snapshots per report. So for every parameter that you run the report with, there'll be a different snapshot. This increases the performance of the report, especially when you don't need the real-time data. HTML component, this is something that we recently built. This is for one of the customers, and now we are productizing it. This is where it allows you to enable create a responsive table and responsive component. And this is also available to all customers. One of the things that we'll be working on very soon is the advanced export and printing options. So if you have used Desktop Studio, you can see that there's some advanced export options, right? And we are extending that to the JasperReports server report viewer, where when you export, you'll get, and I'll show you some of the images that our design team has built and how that will work for you. And the same thing will add for printing. So when you're in the report viewer, you can directly send a job to a printer, or even when you're scheduling it, you can directly send the job to a printer. You don't have to save it to a repository and then print it. Report book optimization. This has to do with, let's suppose if you're using report books where there's several sub-reports or several reports, right? And today what happens is in that every report goes in a serial order. That means the execution happens in a serial order. The first report will execute, printed, second, then printed. And some of the customers have said this can be a performance bottleneck. And so we are looking at something where we can run the queries in parallel, and it doesn't have to run in serial order. The only thing is that we have to ensure that there is no cross dependency between these reports to ensure that even if they run in parallel, there is no, all the calculations are done in the right way. This is just a screenshot given by a designer where you can see that in the scheduler, we can have a print button, right? Obviously, this will have the API as well, but you can directly send a job to a printer as compared to sending it to an email or saving this in the repository. This is the print option in the report viewer. This will already come in 9.5. Plan to be in the 9.5. You can see that in the report viewer, you'll have a button and it will basically give you the print option directly from there. This talks about the advanced export, where you can see now. So initially, right now, if you export, it just says PDF. But now you'll also have the advanced export where you'll give you additional options like layout, content and filtering, and security. So you can apply all those things. Okay, let's talk about GenAI and JasperReports Web Studio. So we have played with GenAI and AIML in two areas, one in Studio, one in Server. So first we'll talk about Studio, and I'll basically go to the demo where Julia will demo two things. One, what are we doing in the 3.0.1, that what new things are coming 3.0.1, and then there'll be a short video of what he has done on the Web Studio from the GenAI perspective. So I will pause the slide and I will move to the videos real quick. Give me 1 second. So first, let me start this one. This is from Giulio. I'll let it play.
Hi, my name is Giulio Toffoli, and I'm the project leader for JasperReports Web Studio, the web designer for JasperReports. In this session, we will see some of the new features that we have introduced in the upcoming version. So we start by creating a new report, and let's start adding some data. So I will pick a data adapter, in this case, some Italian regions. This is a CSV file. So we open the query editor in order to read the fields of this data adapter. And now we preview the data. So this is the data we will use in this session. Let's close the query editor and start adding some fields to my details band. When we work with fields, it's some kind of cumbersome to align them without some help. That's why we finally introduced the snap to geometry feature that allows to easily snap and align elements between each other. If I select multiple elements, all these elements will behave as a single object, so I can easily move or align entire portions of my report. So let's again align my elements and resize the detail band in the position I prefer, like this one. Now, as you can see now, my elements are outside my band, so this will produce an error if I run my report. And this allows me to introduce the new feature, which is the mini toolbar. This mini toolbar appears when one or more elements are selected and allows me to work with these elements. I can duplicate, delete, or copy elements. And this toolbar allows me to access a set of other submenus that provides several features. We will see them in this demo. The one I'm interested right now is adapt to container, and we want to fit the height of my detail. So this way, the elements will properly fit the height of my detail band. And I can now preview my report, and I see my report correctly executed. Now, another interesting feature when I have several elements selected is the enclose in frame. When I click enclose in frame, a new frame is created that contains all my elements. This is, well, working with frame has a several good opportunities. One of them is to set properties as the background to all the elements contained in the frame. In example, I can specify not transparent background and set this like light gray. Okay, like this. And if I preview this now, I should see all my background in gray. But in general, frames are useful, especially when there are elements that grow in size, and I want to keep everything properly aligned. So when a frame entirely, or when the content of the frame entirely occupies the frame itself, it becomes kind of cumbersome to select the frame because clearly it's behind all the elements and there is no way to click on it. Yes, I can use the outline view, but normally it's not what I want. So here we have introduced this T, which allows to select in general the parent element. And this will allow me, in this case, to select the frame, and I can say, okay, no, I want the frame to be transparent. Another element that was kind of cumbersome to select due to its geometry is the line. When we now drag a line inside the report, this line now is by default horizontal. In this case, we can use the adapt to container fit width to fit the width. And its selection now it's simplified because we don't need to pick exactly the pixel of the line, but there is some margin that allows me to clicking close to the line will allow me to select the line. And well, in this case, our records will be separated by this line. When we have several elements, let's create a few rectangles here to showcase this other functionality. They clearly may be overlapping. And if we want to change the zeta order of these elements, we have now this new menu item, which is arrange, and this arrange allows me to send an element to back or to front or in the middle, which is forward and backward. This is very useful, especially when there are many overlapping elements, or if I'm adding a new element after the other, but this element is supposed to be on the back. Let's just keep a single rectangle here and align this and fit this to occupy the entire space of my title band. I also want to remove this 1 pixel black frame that I have around the rectangle, this border, and I preview this report. This will allow me to showcase another functionality that is the ability to see images in my design. So if in this case I will drag an image here, now by default the image does not point to an image, but I can now pick an image from my repository. Let's take this one for instance, and this by default has a white background. So in the appearance, I want to say that this element needs to be transparent, and now I have my element transparent. Of course, I can use all the options to align my image or decide how it should looks like based on the size of my elements. And let's add also a static text here. Let's make this static text a little bit bigger. Change the font, let's say 30 pixel. And if I double click my element, I can now directly type my my text. So there is this new options to inline editing my elements, and this is also valid for text field, for text elements where I have an expression, and the expression editor will open up immediately when I double click an element like this. Okay, let's set this, for instance, to white, like this, and preview my report. And now I have my report with an image that I can see the designer and the title and so on. Now, when a new important new features that we introduced in this new version is the support to create a table. So we will create a new table in the summary of our report. To do that, well, let's start adding the summary band, make it as big as I want, and this is also a new thing in this version, the ability to, well, we now properly calculated the size of our band. We can create several details band and resize them or remove them, and in order to create very, very big reports, which before was still not supported. Now, again, we are talking about table. Let's drag a table in my summary band. And by default, this table will be created with a single column. Now, in order to create a table in Jasper Reports, we need to provide data to this table. And this data needs to come from a new data set. So let's create quickly a new data set like this. And we click on the data set. And well, for the sake of simplicity, we will use the same data adapter, which is the Italian regions, and CSV, and the fields will be the same. So we will create the same content once with the regular flow of my report, and this time by using a table. So let's make this table a little bit bigger, like this. Go to the properties, and now in the data section, we say that we want to use this new data set we just created to populate our table. Okay, we double click on the table. Here we can work with the several sections, right? The table header, the column header, the detail, which is the most important band we want. We can create a couple of columns, and let's add some data to our table. Again, we want to work with the detail, so we can put here the region, the surface, and let's say the number of cities. We can say our report if we want, as 2024. Okay, and we switch to report, and now we see here our table that will be printed in the summary. So let's preview this report. And we have 3 pages. Let's go to the second one, where our table started to be printed here. Of course, we can change all the formatting of the table. This is just a basic table. But let's add at least some column header. And I will do this by showcase a new feature that is available here. Instead of creating a text field, I will add no regular field here in the column header, sorry, in the table header here. And when I have a text field like this, I can convert a text field to static text by clicking on Convert to Static Text. And now this is actually no longer a text field, but a static text. And I can see this by here that it has the symbol of the static text. And I can click on Region like this, and I can copy this with Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V, and automatically populate my column, my table headers, and see this. And well, and of course I can select all my fields here. With Shift now I can independently select elements, while before it was kind of working like in the outline view, make a selection that was not what you would expect. And well, at this point, I can say I want to center this both vertically and horizontally. And then I can preview this, go to the third page, and see my table properly formatted with the table header. Okay, the last feature I want to showcase is the support for columns. Columns allows me to create reports with multiple columns. Right now, the details, as you can see, is represent just a single column. So I can select outside my report, go to columns, and say, I want 2 columns. And at this point, one area will be grayed out because this will be where the other columns will be printed. Let's resize my elements here. I will keep just population and don't care about space, and take the other elements here to fit my column space here. And I will resize the detail. And if I preview this, you will see that my elements actually fill the Jasper reports will fill the first column and then will start filling the second column. This is very useful to create reports that have many very short lines. Okay, I will.
Right, so we'll move to the GenAI video, which on Studio. So on the Studio part, our goal was to first use natural language to SQL conversion. And once we are done with this, we'll look at creating reports with the GenAI. That means designing the reports. But first part is just converting a natural language query to SQL. And this is what you'll see here.
Okay, so let's see what we can do with intelligence, with artificial intelligence in JasperReports Web Studio. I prepare here report for the sake of this demo. It comes with a pre-configured data adapter pointing to a SQL database. So if I can get the metadata of my database and see that it's made of just a few tables about installations. And now, please note that this tool here is not part of the next version of JasperReports Web Studio, and it's shown just for demo purposes. So what we can do with this specialized UI is talk to an artificial intelligence bot where I can ask questions and it will generate for us some SQL queries that we can then use in our report. Let's start with something simple. So find all or count, or simply in terms of a question, how many installations do I have recorded? I sent this query or these questions to my bot, and now he's thinking. Now, some notes about this bot. This bot is based on Llama 3.1, which is running on my machine in this moment. So as you can see here, he replied to my question with some code and some reasoning that also helps me to understand if the query makes sense or not. I can read fields now with the query that was created. It runs properly, and I can see here my total number. So this was kind of a simple query. Let's move to something a little bit more complicated. And we can, for instance, ask what are the different operative system recorded in the first quarter of this year. Yeah, so the engine, the ER engine is working on my machine. Now I'm on a Mac without a GPU, so it's not super fast, but still does not use external services to provide this specific functionality. Okay, now we see this was another pretty simple query involving just one table, but was curious how he found a way to extract the year from the current date and just the first 3 months of the month. Now, if I run my read fields and preview, I see here the result of my query, where it found all the operative systems that were actually put in my demo data. Let's move finally to something a little bit more complicated, like find the top 10 countries for number of installations. Now, in order to find the countries, he will need to perform at least a join, or it depends by what strategy he will employ. And in this case, I expect a query with at least the country and the number of installations. Okay, as you can see, he was able to find a way to perform properly the join based on the foreign key. Let's run this query. He found country name and number of installation. He also uses good name for.
All right. So hopefully this gives you a good idea of what we have done with GenAI on Web Studio, right? We'll continue on this journey where we'll try to also go to the next step, where we'll try to build things, not just run the SQL, but also try to build reports with GenAI. And if you need more details, we can always set up a separate session. As Julia said, this is not the part of 9.5, right? All right, let's talk about new features, which is mostly on the server side. We'll talk about filtering, scheduler, and GenAI on the server side. So filtering, this is something that we have been giving a lot of thought on how to improve the filtering in JasperReports server. So we have different ways of filtering. We have input controls, we have profile attributes, we have parameters, and we also have filters in Ad Hoc. The input controls is something that is a powerful feature. And one of the areas that has been requested by several customers is to conditionally show or hide or enable or disable the input controls. What it means, and I'll give you a very quick demo where Damayanti and Gopal will talk about it, is let's suppose if I have an input control and when I select it, I want the next set of input controls to be based on my selection. So if and you'll see that in the demo. So this is a pretty powerful feature that has, and so I've already shown it to multiple customers on a one-on-one meeting. And everyone has basically said, given a thumbs up because it speaks to many of the use cases that they have. And the second part is the validation messages, which is talks about that on the UI side, I can basically put any validation message. For example, if some input control, a simple example is from and date, from and to field. If I want to put a validation message that you have put a from field, which is more than the to field, I can put a message. So that's the input control, and we'll give you a very quick demo on that one. Profile attributes is another powerful feature that is in our product, where we have user-based, tenant-based, and server-based profile attributes. And we want to introduce something called role-based attributes and context-based attributes. Role-based attributes, as the name says, it will go between user and tenant, where you can define attributes by role. Context is a very specific one where there are very specific uses for context. For example, I can override the session. For example, if I have a new report open in each tab, I want to have for per tab, there's a different context and the attribute value will be different. So there are very specific uses for context-based attributes, and we are still exploring that right now. Parameters. So profile attribute is something that where you have to set the value in advance. That means you have to go into the server, you have to set like this is the user value, this is the tenant value, this is the server value. In many cases, what customers are requesting are, I'm running a report and I pass a value to, let's suppose, a from and date to field. I want to pass the same value to my derived query. So let's suppose I've written a query called select star from country, where from is this and to date field is this. And rather than hard coding it or providing a profile attribute, I want to take the user input. And this is where we are going to use parameters. So we already have this concept of parameters. We just have to extend it to pass it to a derived table query or to even a calculated field that you define in domain or ad hoc. So if you have a calc field, which is based on the user input, for example, I have a calc field where I'm trying to calculate the commission. And depending on the country, so let's suppose if it is Germany, my ratio or commission percentage will be this. If it is France, the commission percentage will be this. So I can make it very dynamic based on the user input, and I don't have to be very static where I have to define these values in advance. So this is something that we're planning in 9.5, and this is something that will go, be in the future releases. And one more thing that we're doing right now is some of the things that we basically are building, for example, input controls that you'll see in a couple of minutes. We're not just putting in the future release, we're also trying to backport that into 9.0 because several customers are saying, we don't want to upgrade for every new feature. And can you backport this one? So we're carefully considering that if the feature is something which is eligible for backport, it does not create any regression issues, it does not create schema changes. If those factors qualify, then we look at them and basically backport them. So even a customer who's on 9.0 will be able to utilize this feature, right? Scheduler and alerting. As you know that we released alerting in 9.0, that was a big feature, and we have several enhancement requests on that part. For example, enabling and disabling at the server level, which we have already done, right? That hotfix was released, and now there's a request for enable and disable by role that is being worked on. On the scheduler side, we have integrations with SendGrid. That was a request by one of the customers. We have done that. And now, right now, we're working on a request from other customer, which is Kafka integration with alerting. That is something that we are working on right now. Print, I already told you that, this is something that we already plan to do. So in the next few months, and that service also will be available. Scheduler as a service is something that we are working on. So we made report execution as a service, which is GRIO, right? We made ad hoc as a service, right? We have done that. Our next goal is to make scheduler as a service, especially for customers who are doing large amount of schedules and going into multiple thousands, 100,000s, 200,000s, and they're moving to cloud. So to have an architecture which is independently scalable and also reduces the compute cost, that's the goal, and that's where we are looking at scheduler as a service. Okay, so we'll talk about GenAI. So next two demos will be two things. One, will show the input controls that we have built, and then Shekhar will talk about the GenAI, what we have done on the server side. So that, let me first go here. Let's look at the input controls, which is by Damayanti and Gopal.
Hello, welcome to the input controls demo. Gopal and I will be showing you some of the new features that we have added to our input controls module. This was a highly requested feature. The idea is to have dynamic input controls based on other input control value selections. Let me show you what that means. I have some reports here, so I'm going to open this one. As you can see, we have store type, filter by open date, remodel dates, store square feet. So store type works as an input control as we know it today. Now, if you want to filter by store manager or by store state, you can select one of these values. And you can see store manager has become visible now. and you can filter by store manager. Alternatively, if you would rather filter by store state, you can click on store state. And now store state is visible and store manager has been hidden. And you can filter by store state instead. Now I'm looking at another report. This is set up in a similar way. You have your regular input control here. And now you have filter by store manager or store state. As you can see over here, store manager and store state are both visible, but they're both disabled. Once I select store manager, I can filter by store manager. This is enabled now. And if I select store state, store manager becomes disabled. And store state, this is enabled, and you can filter by the store state. So let's see what this looks like in the report editor. So I'm going to the store manager input control. And you can see we have fields here for enable, disable input controls or show, hide input controls. In the first report that we saw, they were both enabled, but they were shown or hidden based on a condition. So we selected the condition. So you say if you filter by store manager, that's the condition on which you showed this input control. Store manager input control. Similarly, the store state. Go to store state. This is also enabled by default. But it is shown conditionally. So if the filter by input control selection is store state, in that case, this input control will be visible. Here you go, store state. And if you remember the other report that we saw, which was enabled, disabled rather than hidden. Here we go. This was the enable, disable. I'm going to edit this report. You can see the store manager input control is visible because you've selected show, but under enable, disable, it has been conditionally enabled. So this field is enabled if your filter by value is store manager. So there are a few additional actions you can take. I'm opening this other report. You can see 3 fields at the moment: open date, close date. If I select an open date, which is in this month, this field becomes visible, but it's not enabled. Now, if I select close date, and if I select a close date that is before the open date, you can see this is still disabled. If I select a close date that is after the open date, that's when I can use the following input control. Okay. Another thing that you can look out for is the label of this input control. It says sales label from bundle record. Okay. So I'm going to show you what happened in the background here. I'm going to open the report editor. I'm going to show you the open date. So you can see the open date is always shown and hidden, shown and enabled, sorry. Same with the close date. But if you saw, we had a fourth field, which was sales. So what we set up here was, if you remember, the title was sales from bundle record. This title is a dynamic title. So if you say $R, you're pulling it from a bundle. The sales key is the key that matches with the key in the bundle file. And you can see that the enable disable is conditional. So it was enabled if your open date was earlier than your close date. And it was shown only if the open date was in this date range. So these are a few examples of expressions you can use to further customize your input controls. There's a lot you can do. We will provide some documentation around available expressions. Okay, one more thing I forgot to show earlier was the bundle. So if you remember seeing this sales field, the prompt text was sales, but the custom title was from a bundle file. This is where the bundle file got uploaded. So you have to attach the bundle file to your report, and then you can reference it in your input controls. So I'll show you again what this looks like. Okay, although the field was called sales, it had a conditional label. So sales label came from the bundle, and the open date was in this month. That's why the field was visible. If I go back a month, the field is hidden this time. So I'm going to select one in the month range. And the close date needs to be after the open date. And there you go. The sales field is enabled, it's visible, and also it's taking the title from the bundle file. Okay, so that's all I had for this demo. Thank you.
All right, so that talks about the filtering and the input control that we have built as part of 9.5, and it'll also go in 9.0. That's the plan that we have right now. And as you saw Damayanti speaking about it, you can have various combinations. She spoke about certain ways where you can enable, disable, show, or hide, or even change the bundle or time-based. You can also have user-based input controls. For example, I can say for super user, this will be visible or this will be done. So there are numerous possibilities that you can work with in case of input controls. And we'll also have a deep dive session later as in a different webinar on the same topic. Let me go to the Gen AI part, which Shekhar talk about.
Welcome to Jaspersoft AI Explorer. Lately, our customers have been using Jaspersoft for data exploration. We observed a couple of use cases on how people explore data. And based on our observations, we implemented the AI to enhance the user experience. One of the reasons why people explore data is because they want answers to their questions. Let's demonstrate it with an example here. So this is Jaspersoft sales data. I have account name, account executive, total sales, geographic region, and other parameters here. So since people ask simple questions, they expect simple answers. We'll go ahead and we'll ask a very simple question. Who are the account executives? And it should be able to respond. Yeah, fantastic. So say I am interested in the performance of Emily Johnson here. So I'll just type in sales by Emily by ear, and it should be able to understand that Emily means Emily Johnson, and it gives me the response. Wonderful. So what it does here is that it takes the natural language query, converts it into tokens, identifies the entities, maps it to the database schema, and generates the SQL. It then executes the SQL and explains the response in natural language. We have been testing this with various language models, including open source ones like Llama and Gemma, and other like OpenAI's GPT, and the results are fantastic. We intend to make it configurable for users to integrate multiple language models. We are currently working on creating visualizations directly from natural language query. Other use case why people explore data is to establish relation among multiple variables. So let me pull another data over here. And this is a real estate data wherein I have area type, availability, location, society, number of rooms, total square foot, bathroom, balcony, and price in lakhs. So I'll go ahead and I'll predict the price. I'll input, say, I need a 3-room house with a total area of, say, 2,000 square feet and 3 bathrooms and 3 balcony, and I press predict and I get the price. So what it basically does is it runs an algorithm, linear regression in this case, and it returns an equation. And based on this equation, we are able to predict the price. I can add it to a list, and I can play around with the data over here. So I can add more data, and I can predict and add it to the list. So I can keep on adding data to the list, and I can download the data and analyze the data. This is not only restricted to running linear regressions. I can create clusters here. I can detect anomalies. And currently we are in process of adding more algorithms, and we hope to come up with more in future. Thank you.
Right. So that was the GenAI demo by Shekhar. Let's move forward. This is where we were. And again, I know we are going pretty quickly on these things, but we wanted to cover a couple of important topics. And if any of you wants more details on these topics, please feel free to set up a call. As Michelle said in the beginning, your customer, set up a call with your account executive or CSM. If you're a prospect, then reach out to us via jaspersoft.com/contact us. All right, let's move forward. Ad hoc reporting. This is the self-service reporting part, and there are things that we're building here, especially visualize, and I will let Anna cover right after this slide. I'll hand it over to Anna. But let's cover a couple of important things that we're doing. One is a new design panel. So this is what Anna will demo very soon. And this is just to improve the usability of the ad hoc designer, right? And how it'll improve the user experience for a designer. New UI toolkit, this is an important part that we have taken. This is to consider that especially for customers who are embedding it, right? They have said that, look, some of the components that we have in Jaspersoft looks somewhat dated or some doesn't comply with ADA. So we need something which is much more modern looking things. And that's our solution right now to build this new UI toolkit, which is pluggable, which is more modern. And again, Amana will go into details on those parts. ADA compliance. So outside of toolkit, we're also looking at ADA compliance on the current UI. So we are working, as I said in the beginning, we are working on the different pages, different menu items, and now we are working on the designer, the ad hoc designer, to make it ADA compliant. We're in parallel, we also have some plans for ad hoc improvements. Several customers have asked for a SQL editor within the ad hoc designer. That is something that we are looking at. This is not planned for 9.5. This is something that we are planning to work on. And the same thing, drag and drop in Excel. So drag and drop in Excel is already a feature which is in our, remember I spoke about Jaspersoft Creators platform. So that's a platform where we tried different things. So that there's something that we tried here. So in the same way we tried like concept of my workspace, public workspace, private workspace, rate limiters. So you have that feature there in that Jaspersoft engineering instance. We just haven't ported that to the production one, to the release branch. And that is something that we plan to do that in the future. Dashboard enhancements, as you can see, it will go into 9.0 and 9.5. This is to say, if you're a dashboard designer and if you select a particular filter, it will highlight what are the different dashlets that will be affected by that filter. And also, one of the complaints we had from dashboard designers was that I cannot edit an external ad hoc view within the dashboard, and I have to basically close it, go to that ad hoc view, and then edit it. That we have allowed kind of, and you can call it an inline editing. So we can allow editing of external ad hoc views from the dashboard. So I'll hand it over to Anna from here. She will cover two things. She will cover the new UI toolkit, and she'll also give you a demo of new design panel. And if you have time towards the end, I will show you how to get to the creators platform and start building it. And for customers who directly want access to Web Studios, you can actually go there and play with it. All right, Anna, over to you. So I'll stop sharing and I'll hand it over to Anna.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to go over a couple of things today. First is going to be our soon-to-be released Jaspersoft Visualize components. And after that, I'm going to give you a demonstration of how we've redesigned the Ad Hoc Designer and how you build visualizations. So I'll jump right in first on the Jaspersoft Visualize components, giving you a high-level overview of this soon-to-be released feature. First, what is it? It's a pre-built set of UI components that will work seamlessly with JasperReports Server and Visualize.js. It is open source, so it's free to use. You can distribute it as part of your own application, and we invite you to contribute back to the project, whether that is reporting issues or contributing your ideas. It's modern, it's built with TypeScript, Vite, React.js, and Material UI. So it's designed to operate within any web environment, whether it's vanilla JavaScript, Angular, Vue, React, or any other framework. And it is configurable. You can control the look and feel. You can also customize your workflows. I'm going to give you a couple of examples of how it is configurable. So one of the components we'll be releasing is our scheduler. And out of the box, it looks like the image on the left. So there's 4 tabs, just how we have it today: the schedule, parameters, notifications, and output. There's a progress indicator on the left that shows what values you've already selected, if there's any errors so far. You can customize it. You can customize the look and feel. As I show on the right-hand side, I've customized the tabs to look a little bit different. And also, let's say I wanted to remove the output tab. So I can do that as well, and you'll see that the output tab is gone, and also that step in the progress indicator in that left-hand panel is not there. Another customization, let's say that on the output tab, I want to remove time zone and formats because I want to just programmatically have those always be the same. I want the time zone to be, America, Los Angeles, and say PDF is what I always want it to export as or output as. So I can hide those things. Now for input controls, we will be releasing a new set of input controls. Same types as we have now, but they are more modern looking. They are built on Material UI components. So let's say for a Boolean input control, I don't have an option of just a checkbox. I can choose if I want to have a checkbox or a switch control. So getting back to what are these components, they are accessible. So it does take a lot of time and effort to make an application accessible. You have to know a lot about web accessibility standards and assistive devices, and this will save you a little bit of time. The accessibility is available out of the box. So there's screen reader support and keyboard navigation built right into these components. For example, I'll show you the date input control. So this shows the tab pattern or keyboard navigation pattern through the date control. So, it starts on the month, I tab to the day, I tab to the year, and then if I tab again, I get the calendar button. And if I wanted to select from the calendar rather than enter the month, day, year by hand, then I can hit return and open the calendar. And then I can tab, and I think it's using the arrow keys through the calendar to select my date. It is also ready to use. All you have to do is install using npm or yarn, and then you can start using it right away. So who should use the Visualize.js components? Anyone who needs to embed JavaScript visualizations or applications or extend the Jaspersoft functionality of their new or existing Jaspersoft projects. And why should you use it? Because it will save you time. You can build your applications faster. You can use only our components, or you can use them alongside your own components. As I showed you before, you can customize the look and feel, and it will help you more easily meet accessibility requirements because it's built in. Where to find it? So it will be coming soon to GitHub. There will be full documentation, and I will give you a quick peek at that page. So you can go to the introduction, get full documentation about the input controls, JV tools. We haven't added scheduler here yet, but it will be there very soon. So that is a conclusion of the components. Now, what I'm really excited about is to show you a demo of the new building visualizations in the Ad Hoc Designer. So let's jump right in. We'll start by creating. Go to Supermart. Inventory. Okay, so you will notice that the layout band on the top above the canvas is no longer there. It has been replaced by this build visualization panel on the left next to the data panel. We realized that building visualizations in Ad Hoc was a lot of trial and error. The only drop areas you were given for any type of chart was columns and rows, and that does not map to every visualization type. Pretty much just crosstab for table. You can have columns and groups, but what about bar and column, spider? It just doesn't always map. So we have customized the drop areas according to what a visualization type you have selected. So when you first come in, we'll show you what visualization type you have selected. So you'll see on the canvas, it says start building a crosstab because crosstab is the default visualization type. So I am just going to start by building a crosstab. I will start with regions. I'm going to add country to columns. And state. And store type. And then for rows, let's do units ordered and units shipped. So there I have my crosstab. And if I want, I can swap the columns and rows with this button here. This used to be up in the toolbar. It only applies to crosstabs, actually, so we have put it in the build visualization panel. There we go. And now I'm going to save this before I show you a few other things. Oops. Okay, now save it. Okay, now I'm going to start a new one. To Supermart products. And let's take a look at the other chart types and what happens when I select those. So I'm going to select column, and you'll see that the message on the canvas changes to say start building a column. It tells me what I need to do to build a column chart, which fields and measure, I can add fields and measures to y-axis and add fields to columns. So I'm going to actually build a quick column chart. Go with unit sales to axis. And category to columns. So there I have my y-axis and columns. Now let's see what happens when I move through some other chart types. So if I switch from column to bar, it changes to a bar chart. And then also my drop areas are x-axis and bars instead of y-axis and columns. Let's say if I go to a spider column, I have radial axis and columns. Okay, I'm going to clear these out and show a few other chart types. So let's look at time series. So now my drop areas are time axis and lines. If I have a time series area, time axis and areas, scatter, and bubble. So these are some of the more complex chart types that we have, and clearly column and row doesn't match these at all. So here we have x-axis, y-axis, values, and color by. So a much clearer breakdown of the elements that you add to build a scatter chart. So let's look at pie. So here we have slices and multiples, and heat map, x-axis, y-axis, and value. So in addition to the drop areas showing you what you can add to them, so x-axis I can only add a field, y-axis I can only add a field, and value I can only add a measure. If you hover over any of the labels, it gives you a deeper explanation of what happens in the chart when you add that field or measure. So now I want to show you some error handling, and to do that I'm going to go back to our crosstab that we built. So many of you may have experienced when you build a chart, maybe you want to switch it to another type of visualization. And that didn't always go very well. Sometimes you would end up with just a strange mishmash of a chart, and you know, whatever fields or measures you had in columns or rows, if you switched to something completely different, like let's say a gauge, it didn't know what to do. But now we built in some error handling that should more elegantly handle when you switch chart types and guide you to recover from that. So if I change from this crosstab to a gauge, oh, that didn't work. Let's try that again. Well, I'm afraid this isn't working for me right now, but I can explain what happens is that any fields that don't map to this visualization type will end up in it's not really a drop area because you can't drop anything into it, but it is a box, like it says rows here, and it will say unused. And it will have a red error message on it telling you that these items are unused in this particular visualization type, and then you would need to delete those before you are able to continue building your visualization. So I apologize as I'm working on this particular instance, but it is a much nicer way to recover from switching visualization types that don't quite map. So that concludes my demonstration of the new way of building visualizations in the Ad Hoc Designer, and I'm going to pass it back to Michelle. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Anna. Hey, one more note. So one of the core goals of Jaspersoft engineering team is to enable the customers on a continuous basis. So we are planning some deep dive sessions as part of Dr. Jaspersoft. So the next session is on the two REST APIs for report execution, which is the report service and the report execution API. And I know several customers in the recent past have come to me asking about stress testing. How do you do it? How do you run large exports, which are into thousands of pages, right? What are the recommendations? What are the configurations to basically run such tests? That will be covered in the sessions, which is planned on 10th of October. We'll also have a deep dive session on the Visualize toolkit, how the architecture and the code base and how do you take it. That's, I think it's planned in November. And also sessions on how to do a source code deployment, Docker deployment on all those things. So we'll be doing a lot of those enablement sessions. And if your team is interested in that, I would really encourage you to subscribe to Dr. Jaspersoft, because we'll be going through a lot of deep dive sessions on those in those Dr. Jaspersoft webinars, right? So I know, Michelle, we don't have much time left. So if you want to take the next 10 minutes for Q&A, I'm more than happy. And I just wanted to show a quick review of what I was talking about earlier. I know someone asked me about S3 bucket, if we can schedule to S3 bucket. So this is the okay, let me minimize it. And then I'll answer all the questions. So this is the creators platform. As I can see that I have, so hold on, I have to move this.
Abhishek, we are not able to see the creators platform right now.
You don't see it right now?
No. Anna, can you unshare?
Yes.
There we go. Here we go.
Okay, let me share again. Do you see it now?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the creators platform. You can go, anyone can sign up and sign in, and you have two options. You have reporting, you have a server, right? You come to reporting, this is where you'll go. You'll get to the Web Studio part and you can create any new report from scratch, right? So we encourage users to go ahead and try it. We have put, as I was talking about the features, right, that we have introduced in this one, we have some features which are very specific to this particular platform, right? It has a login, you can sign in and sign up. It has concepts of my workspace, which is a dedicated public or a private workspace. It has a concept of rate limiters. That means I can throttle the number of executions that you can perform. I can throttle the number of resources you can create. And we also have the features like Excel drop-in. So there are several features which are there, which are not there in the release branches. And that's our goal. We'll basically introduce a lot of features here. We'll test it and we get a good validation from customers. Then we'll basically go ahead and try it out. The other part is we'll keep contributing a lot of samples, which you'll see here. And you always have the option of copying them and basically putting them into your workspace. So it'll load right now. So you can go to those samples, you can basically clone them. So if you're signed in, you can go to these samples. For example, Julio was talking about scooter sample, like one of those ones. You can go to Julio's sample. If you like it, you can clone that into your own workspace and start building it from there. So that's the creators platform. So two things, one is here. So, and the second is the Dr. Jaspersoft webinars, where we'll be doing a lot of deep dive sessions. Michelle, over to you.
Great. Yes, and in addition to the creators platform and the Dr. Jaspersoft, if you are interested in signing up for our newsletter, we do try and share, again, the latest and greatest when we come out with enablement videos, customer stories. So please feel free to connect with us on our website if you're interested in getting that newsletter on a monthly basis. Abhishek, taking a look at the questions, I know many of them were answered. Is there anything you'd like to cover live for the group today?
So there's one question which is there, can the visualization toolbox be used with the community edition or commercial license required? So this is free, so you can use it for free. You don't have to hear it, but you don't have community edition, right? Because the community edition is library. This requires server. The toolkit that we're talking about requires server. So you would need a commercial server for that purposes. Hey, Gene, is that you? All right, I see Gene Arnold. All right.
Right. Okay, and just to remind everyone, we will be following up today's webinar and sharing a link to this recording. But as Abhishek mentioned, if you have questions on your specific use case or you'd like to talk through your future deployment plans, please contact us through either your account executive or customer success manager, or again, through our website. Abhishek, there's another question on access to Web Studio. So how do users get access to Web Studio, and does it have a separate license and subscription?
Right. So as I said earlier, for all the existing customers who are JasperReports Server, Library, or IO customers, and that is available to you for free. You can just go to e-delivery, download the product, and start using it. You don't have to pay anything additional for that.
Great. There's hopping back to Visualize.js, another question just came in on the chat. Can this integrate with Secrets Manager, the Visualize.js?
Send me the specific details of what you're trying to achieve, and I can answer that question.
Terrific. Okay. Where do we get more information, or where do users get more information on the new UI toolkit?
So as Anna kind of demoed that, we'll have a dedicated GitHub page, and we'll also have a Dr. Jaspersoft webinar in November, where the developers will come and they will actually go to that GitHub page. They'll talk about the architecture. They'll actually show you code samples and actually give you a live demo of how to do it with some samples like input controls and scheduler. So you'll get the full details.
Okay. And then there's a question here, how to install the Jasper and the Tomcat server. Would they be able to find those answers in our documentation?
Yeah, that's there in our documentation. That's a very straightforward. You should get all the documentation.
So our documentation is housed on our community site. So that's where top tab, you'd be able to search through not only our current versions, but also prior versions as well. Now Web Studio, does that support SSL? Is there any documentation?
Yes, it is. And I think we had a Dr. Jaspersoft webinar on the same topic on the authentication in Web Studio. So you can actually refer to that one.
Great. Now you can find recordings of our Dr. Jaspersoft sessions on our Jaspersoft site, as well as on our YouTube channel. So those are two areas that you can find those Dr. Jaspersoft recordings. Okay, so is there documentation on how to install my developed reports into a Tomcat server?
Say that again, how to?
Yes, how to install developed reports into a Tomcat server.
Yeah, you should get all the documentation. That means what you're trying to do is you're using Tomcat as your web server and you're trying to deploy all your reports there, right? So that is a that's our default, by the way. That's our default web application server that we ship with. So that is something we can definitely show to you, and you can find all the documentation.
Great. Another question coming up about Visualize.js. Will this support hide show parameters conditionally?
Yes. So it's like the samples. So the backend will still be the server, right? So all these things that you'll build input controls will still be in the server. What you're trying to do is that you're trying to read the metadata and data from the server and basically package that into a new UI component. So yes, it will still utilize all those things, just the component will be a different one.
Great. All right. So Abhishek, can you please cover what versions are supported? When will the current version go end of life?
So 8.0, right? So the current one supported 8.0, 9.0, and then obviously 9.5 will come into picture. We extended the end of support for 8.0 to end of this year, which is December 31st. We might plan to extend it to another, or we have an extended support in 8.0 because I understand the customers are still trying to move to 9.0. And as I said earlier, my intention is not to push the customers to upgrade very fast. That's not the intention. But we also want the customers on a long-term stable release. I also understand many customers landed up on 8.1 and 8.2, and it was more of a communication thing, but I would highly encourage them to pick a long-term stable release and plan to move to that. The only thing that I will ask them is that look at the 9.0 and 9.5 matrix, figure out where do you want to land up on the Jakarta side or on the Java side, and pick the right version.
Great, thank you. So my company is going through data modernization and consolidation. Who can help us figure out how Jaspersoft fits into our overall architecture?
So we have done that with multiple customers. Actually, this is a very common thing that is happening, especially with the large enterprise customers. So we have worked with multiple customers on this area, and we have addressed several questions, right from database connectivity to being a completely microservices architecture, and how do we fit in the overall architecture. So we can definitely do that. So either work with us, or you can, you reach out to your account executive or the CSM, and they can help you facilitate it.
Great. Can you talk to us more about the future of JasperReports IO?
So JasperReports IO is a critical part. We still have so many customers utilizing JasperReports IO. The core use case of JasperReports IO is someone who's basically building a small microservice, a reporting microservice, and they don't want a massive deployment. They want a very small deployment into small megabytes, and they want to churn out large amount of reports into, you can actually go into hundreds of thousands of reports. But it's a microservice. That means it will only do two things. So it will design reports using Studio and execute them. It does not have any other features around it. You have to build it. So if that meets your use case, and I know many of our customers does, then JasperReports is still there. It will still continue to be there. What we're doing today is we are using JasperReports IO into Web Studio. For example, anytime you preview the reports in Web Studio, it's basically executing GRIO in the background. We are also utilizing GRIO for our own products.
Great. So I think there's a little bit of clarification here, but is the future goal to have Excel drop straight into the server and not have to set up a data source for the link?
Correct. So you can directly drop the Excel, and we have that in the Creators platform, by the way. So you can directly drop it. It'll create the domain in the background. So you don't have to go create anything. It'll just drop in. And Anna, you can talk to the design flow of what we're planning for multiple Excels also in the future. But that's our goal, right? Drop the Excel directly into Ad Hoc.
Great. Seems like that's going to be an exciting feature. Alerts, do these support multiple rules and conditions?
Yes, it does. You can have multiple alerts per reports by user.
Great. And how do I include the AI that you talked about in this webinar with our JasperReports project?
So we are building it as a pluggable solution, right? Which may be almost independent of versions. And we always are thinking of anything new as a pluggable and configurable part. Now, we haven't tagged this to a release because this probably will not require a release for such, but we haven't finalized yet that how the final package will be shipped. So I'm still looking for more validations, more conversations with the customers of how it will help them. And then we can decide that, how this will fit into your environment, but it'll be pluggable and independent. So if you want to put this AI Explorer into your project, you can do that without, through Visualize probably in the future.
Perfect. And then how can users work more closely with Jaspersoft engineering for topics like performance, design, large report execution, and embedding?
So the best thing is to, you can always reach out to us, to me, through the CSM or through the AE. But we also have, as I said, about Dr. Jaspersoft webinars, right? For example, the next one is the REST API, and it will talk about virtualizer, it will talk about stress testing, everything. The next one is about embedding and Visualize, where the core developers will come and talk about different ways of embedding it, right? So we'll have deep dive sessions, but if you need anything more than that, always feel free to set up a call with us through the AE or the CSM.
All right. And one last, looks like pretty specific product question here, but can alerts be configured to send Kafka messages instead of email?
Yes, that is what we have been, one of our customers, they requested it. And right now we are working on it. And first we did the SendGrid, now we're planning to do the Kafka integration, and very soon we should be able to do it.
Great. Okay, now we're right at time. So wanted to thank all of our guests that joined us live today for the product roadmap webinar. We hope you found this interesting and are excited about what's ahead on the future path for Jaspersoft. So thank you all again. And thank you to the team for taking your time to present these resources and demos.
And thank you, Jean, for attending. I didn't know that you're there. Good. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.